They came expecting chains and contempt. They left carrying the seeds of a new Japan. In the crisp September light of 1945, a rattling army truck stopped on the flat, endless plains of western Nebraska. 28 Japanese prisoners of war, survivors of Guadalcanal, the Solomons, and the unrelenting hell of the Pacific, stepped down, still wearing the pride of Bushido, still convinced America was a soft, overfed nation that would crumble without its gadgets. They were about to be proven wrong in the most devastating way possible. Not by force, but by the quiet, overwhelming power of American abundance and ingenuity. This is the forgotten story of how ordinary Nebraska farmers, their tractors, and one hulking McCormick-Deering combine harvester did what no battlefield victory could fully achieve. They shattered the imperial myth of Japanese superiority and helped plant the roots of Japan's post-war economic miracle. Captain Hiroshi Kato, 29, a former Zero pilot hardened by combat over the Solomon Islands, carried imperial doctrine like a second skin. America was decadent, undisciplined, a paper tiger propped up by Hollywood illusions. He had seen the endless rations and medical kits on Guam and dismissed them as wartime tricks. Now, as the guards removed his restraints near Scottsbluff, he looked out at mile after mile of golden wheat, silos rising like sentinels, farmhouses dotting the horizon. This was no fortress. This was farmland. What kind of punishment was this? Sergeant Elias Thompson, 32, a Kansas-born farmer with a limp from a pre-war accident, ran the POW labor details. He had enlisted in 1941 but stayed stateside. His orders were clear: follow the Geneva Conventions to the letter. Fair treatment, decent food, safe quarters, and put the prisoners to work on the harvest that was feeding Allied armies across 2 oceans. There was also an unspoken goal. Let these men see with their own eyes what made America unstoppable. Not hatred, not propaganda, but hard work, smart machines, and the everyday miracle of a free people building a better tomorrow. The 28 prisoners were divided among 4 local farms, each paired with Nisei interpreters to bridge the language gap. Private Akira Suzuki, 24, from a fishing family in Hokkaido, went to the vast Miller farm. Owner Harlan Miller, 58, hands rough from decades in the soil, had 2 sons fighting, one in Normandy, one in Italy. He greeted the prisoners plainly. Dawn start, work till early afternoon, breaks for meals the same as the guards. No quotas, no threats, just clear tasks, tools, and demonstrations. Suzuki, braced for cruelty, pushed himself brutally the first day. Miller calmly called breaks for water and shade. The midday meal, fresh bread, vegetables, even a small piece of meat, shocked him. It rivaled pre-war officers' fare back home. On the Larson Ranch, Captain Cato worked under Elias Larson, 50, who hid his grief over a nephew lost at Midway behind steady fairness. The prisoners swung scythes, loaded carts, learned basic tool repairs. Weeks passed in grueling but predictable rhythm. Cato noticed the signs of abundance: full barns, healthy livestock, fast road deliveries. He told himself it was a performance. It had to be. The turning point came in mid-October. Larson pulled up with a towering machine of steel and gears. Through the interpreter he said simply, "This is our combine harvester, a 1939 McCormick-Deering. It reaps, threshes, and cleans the grain in one pass. One man can do what teams of workers take days to finish." Cato's mind reeled. Weapon. Prototype. Sergeant Taro Ikeda, a former Tokyo mechanic, stepped closer, eyes wide. Larson opened panels, explained the engine, cutter bar, cylinder, sieves, and hopper. One operator clears 50 acres a day. We've had them for over a decade. Thousands across the country. This is how we feed the world. When the machine roared to life and devoured a 25-foot swath of wheat, turning standing crop into clean grain in minutes, the prisoners stood frozen. Dust swirled. Revelation hung in the air. That night in the warm barracks, over hearty meals, Major Kenjiro Fujita, a pre-war Osaka economist, spoke the thought they all felt. If their farms work like this, their arsenals must dwarf ours. Our leaders didn't miscalculate. They were delusional. Over the ensuing days, observations piled up. Suzuki on the Miller farm saw a tractor plow furrows with precision attachments, turning soil faster than oxen teams he'd known. Deliveries arrived promptly. Seeds, fertilizers, parts ordered via catalogs from distant warehouses. The interpreter, Samuel Nakamura, a Nisei from California, fielded questions patiently. He described America's immigrant fabric, people from everywhere building together, innovation driven by competition and education, not just decree. Nakamura shared that Japanese Americans numbered over 120,000, many loyal citizens despite wartime suspicions, with thousands volunteering for U.S. service in segregated units like the 442nd Infantry, earning medals in Europe while families endured relocation camps, a policy debated fiercely in American courts and papers. This clashed with the prisoners' ethos of ethnic purity and hierarchy. How could a society thrive on ideas over bloodlines? Kato pondered during quiet moments, jotting notes in a permitted journal. The grid of power lines lighting remote homes, telephones linking farms to markets, radios broadcasting news freely. Even consumer goods, watches on guards' wrists, varied and affordable, hinted at mass production's depth. By November, as frost dusted the fields, assignments shifted to corn. The mechanical picker astonished anew. It navigated rows, stripping ears, husking them, and collecting in one fluid motion, embodying relentless American problem-solving. Larson hosted a modest lunch one day, roast beef, potatoes, milk, where his wife, Clara, spoke softly of their son lost in the Philippines. "War takes from everyone," she said. "I don't blame individuals, I blame the choices that led us here." Her words, devoid of venom, pierced Kato's defenses. In Japan, such openness might invite censure, yet here it fostered reflection. The camp, POW Branch Camp No. 4 near Scottsbluff, held 700 souls, whispers of these encounters spreading like wildfire. Thompson noted shifts, prisoners requesting books on agriculture, practicing English phrases, debating late into nights. Winter's bite arrived, but heated quarters and wool coats buffered it, contrasting sharply with Pacific hardships. News trickled in via loud papers, Allied advances, Japan's strains. Doubts deepened, had their sacrifices been based on lies? Private Suzuki, in a delayed letter home, captured the irony. Nourished better in captivity than on the front lines. As 1945 waned, the atomic strikes reports arrived, shattering remnants of denial. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the scale unimaginable. For Kato, the Combine had been the initial fracture. Now, reality cascaded through. As the winter of 1945 to 1946 settled over Nebraska like a heavy blanket, the prisoners at Camp Scottsbluff began to see the American Heartland not just as a place of captivity, but as a living laboratory of systems they had been taught could never exist. The Combine harvester had cracked open the first door. What followed was a steady stream of everyday demonstrations that widened it until the entire frame of their beliefs threatened to collapse. Captain Kato found himself assigned more frequently to the Larson farm as the snow deepened and outdoor work slowed. Now the tasks shifted indoors, repairing harnesses, sharpening tools, overhauling tractor engines in the war machine shed. Larson patiently explained each step, never rushing, never belittling. One afternoon, while they cleaned the carburetor of a John Deere tractor, Larson mentioned offhand that this particular model had been purchased new in 1940, 6 years earlier, and still ran like new because replacement parts were readily available through mail-order catalogs. Kato asked how long it took for parts to arrive. 3 days, sometimes 2 if the order is urgent, Larson replied. The warehouse in Omaha keeps thousands in stock. Kato did the mental arithmetic. 3 days from hundreds of miles away, for a civilian farmer. In the Imperial Navy, critical aircraft parts sometimes took weeks to reach forward bases, if they arrived at all. Private Suzuki, meanwhile, continued working with Harlan Miller. One January morning, Miller received a package containing new spark plugs and a timing belt for his Combine, ordered just before Christmas. The box bore the label of a company in Chicago. Suzuki watched as Miller installed the parts in under an hour, the tractor roaring back to life with barely a cough. "Catalog," Miller said simply, tapping the cover of a thick Sears Roebuck booklet that sat on the workbench. Inside were pages upon pages of tools, appliances, clothing, even prefabricated barns, everything imaginable, priced for ordinary people. Suzuki flipped through it in wonder. The variety was staggering. The prices were astonishingly low. This was not the scarcity-driven economy he had known. This was abundance engineered into daily life. The interpreter Samuel Nakamura became a quiet bridge during these months. The prisoners, once wary of him as a supposed traitor to his ancestry, now sought him out. They asked about American elections, about labor unions, about why farmers owned their land instead of the state controlling it. Nakamura explained concepts like individual rights, free enterprise, and the rule of law with careful patience. He told them how the Constitution protected speech and religion, how courts could even challenge the government. To men raised under absolute imperial authority, these ideas sounded almost fantastical, yet the evidence surrounded them. No one was dragged away for questioning policy. Guards argued politics over coffee. Newspapers arrived daily with critical editorials about the war effort itself. One evening in the barracks, Major Fujita gathered a small circle of officers. He spoke in hushed tones. "We were told the Americans lacked spiritual unity, that their society was fractured by greed and individualism. But look around. Their farms are more productive than entire provinces back home. Their people are fed, clothed, housed. Their machines do not break because they are built well and maintained constantly. This is not weakness. This is discipline of a different kind, discipline applied to systems, to planning, to improvement." Cato nodded slowly. The propaganda had insisted that material superiority was temporary, that spirit would prevail. Yet here, spirit and material had fused into something unstoppable. As February arrived, the prisoners were allowed supervised visits to the small town of Scottsbluff itself. Under heavy guard, of course, but the experience was profound. They walked past grocery stores with shelves stacked high, butcher shops displaying cuts of beef they had not seen in years, hardware stores selling tools that would have been treasures in wartime Japan. Children rode bicycles. Families gathered in diners. The streets were clean, the buildings sturdy, the people busy but unhurried. No slogans plastered on walls. No fear in the eyes of civilians. It was ordinary life. Ordinary in a way that made the prisoners feel as though they had stepped into another century. In March, with the ground thawing and spring planting approaching, the prisoners returned to the fields. The combine harvester reappeared, now being tuned for the coming season. Larson invited Cato and Ikeda to watch the annual maintenance ritual. As the farmer greased fittings and checked belts, he spoke about the future. "After the war," he said, "we'll build even better machines. Faster, more efficient. And we'll sell them all over the world." Cato asked quietly if America would punish Japan. Larson paused, then answered honestly, "I don't know what the politicians will do. But out here, we know that hungry people can't work, and angry people can't build. If your country wants to recover, it will need machines like this. And maybe one day you'll make them yourselves." The formal surrender had been announced months earlier, but details were slow to reach the camp. When they finally learned the full scope, the firebombings, the atomic weapons, the occupation, the impact was devastating. Yet for many, the shock was softened by what they had already witnessed. The Combine had prepared them. They understood now that the disparity was not temporary, not illusory. It had been real, measurable, and growing for decades while Japan had chosen a different path. In April 1946, repatriation orders arrived. The men packed their few belongings, notebooks filled with observations, small souvenirs, memories that weighed more than any suitcase. Before departure, Cato requested one final meeting with Larson. The farmer agreed. They met in the machine shed, the combine standing silent beside them like an old friend. Through Nakamura, Cato spoke carefully. "I came here believing my nation was superior in spirit. I leave knowing that true superiority lies in creation, not conquest. I will tell my people what I saw, not to shame them, but to show them what is possible." Larson listened, then replied, "Tell them we are not gods. We are just people who decided long ago that work should be made easier, that hunger should be defeated, that tomorrow should be better than today. If Japan chooses that same path, you'll build things we haven't even dreamed of yet." They shook hands, firm, equal, without ceremony. Cato bowed slightly, a gesture of deep respect. As the truck carried them away toward the train station, he looked back at the farm one last time. The combine sat in the sunlight, ordinary yet extraordinary, a machine that had done more to change minds than any battle ever could. The journey home was long, first by rail to the west coast, then by ship across the Pacific. The men who disembarked in Yokohama stepped into a nation transformed by defeat. Cities lay in ruins. Food was scarce. Occupation forces patrolled the streets. Yet among the returning prisoners, a quiet determination took root. They carried no bitterness toward the Americans they had met. Instead, they carried lessons etched deep, that productivity could lift a people faster than ideology could, that ingenuity directed toward peace could outpace ingenuity directed toward war. Years later, Captain Cato became a civil servant in the new Ministry of Agriculture, helping introduce mechanized farming techniques to Japanese cooperatives. Private Suzuki returned to Hokkaido and, using savings earned in camp script, bought his first small fishing boat with an outboard motor. Within a decade he owned a fleet, all equipped with American-style efficiency principles he had observed on the Miller farm. Major Fujita resumed teaching at a university in Osaka, where his lectures on comparative economic systems drew from personal experience, influencing policymakers who shaped Japan's miraculous recovery. The combine harvester itself became a symbol in their minds, not of American dominance, but of human potential when freed from dogma. It had never judged them, never threatened them. It had simply worked, relentlessly, efficiently, feeding millions while they watched in stunned silence. And in that silence, the first seeds of a different future had been planted. In the end, the most powerful weapon deployed in Nebraska was neither bomb nor bullet. It was a machine designed to gather wheat, and the quiet, irrefutable truth it carried, that a nation's greatness is measured not by how fiercely it fights, but by how abundantly it creates.